In 1888, the Whitechapel district of London was becoming increasingly overcrowded. Work and housing conditions worsened. 55% of children born in the East End died before they were just 5 years old. Robbery, violence, and alcohol dependency were commonplace in Whitechapel. Poverty drove many women to prostitution. Specifically, there were 62 brothels and 1,200 women working as prostitutes in Whitechapel. In addition to the clear economic tension, social tensions were rising in Whitechapel as well. Between 1886 and 1889, frequent demonstrations led to police intervention and public unrest, such as Bloody Sunday of 1887, anti-Semitism, crime, nativism, racism made Whitechapel notorious for being on the wrong side of town. But just when you believe things can't get any worse, they do. On August 30th, a prostitute trying to make ends meet was murdered. Her lower body had been stabbed twice, and the lower part of her abdomen was also partly ripped open by a deep, jagged wound. This wound caused her bowels to protrude. Fear flooded the community, and media coverage stretched outside of London and across the world. But this was just the beginning of the vicious and grotesque murders attributed to a serial killer, Jack the Ripper. My name is Kayla, and this is Cauldron Convos, baby. Ooh, peep kebab, peep kebab. Some sister. Want some?
Yeah, I want some. Give me some.
If you are new here, my name is Kayla, this is Zeno, and we are Cauldron Convos. We post weekly videos on the paranormal, spine-chilling, true crime topics that you definitely want to hear. Our goal is to entertain you, educate you, and sometimes make you laugh, so make sure to hit that subscribe button if you are here. And thank you. Is my mouth, like, yellow now? No. Okay. Not that it matters. My nose was green in last episode from the mask that we were wearing for Mardi Gras, or 2 episodes ago, I guess. Thank you to all of our returning subscribers. We love you guys so much. And thank you to all the nice comments. If you want, please comment down below. We reply to every single comment, so make sure to write something. It could be literally anything. It could be about peep kebabs. It could be about our smoke machine because, you know, it could be about snake and pipes or pipe and snakes. But let's get into a little bit of the background on Jack the Ripper. Just a little brief synopsis before we get into it. Jack the Ripper was an unidentified serial killer in the Whitechapel district of London, England in the late 1800s. Now, he is believed to have been responsible for the murder of at least 5 female prostitutes. And the killings took place over a period of several months, and they involved the mutilation of the victims' bodies. Disgusting. With organs and body parts often removed by Jack the Ripper, sometimes taken, sometimes, you know, left in weird positions on the body. Just really gross stuff.
Serial killers are some weird folk.
But we'll get into it. We'll get into all of the juicy organs. Ugh.
Yeah. One of the theories that we're going to get into later is maybe he was a doctor, and that's why he was into organs.
Are doctors into organs? I guess sometimes they're into...
like a surgery.
Whoa,
Surgeon.
Not a cow vagina. I don't know.
Why have I seen that video?
I know. Like, I feel like a glove.
Like the glove to the elbow.
Yeah,
inside
or like
a cow.
horse. Or like like birth or something. Okay.
Did we watch that together?
Yeah, just like a casual Saturday night, Netflix and chill, watching cows get impregnated by hands.
Probed.
And chill. Probed. Okay, Zenu, enough with the probing. Ew, okay. All right, anyway. In September and October 1888, rumors started circulating that the murders were connected. So obviously a serial killer starts with like one murder. So it's just like, oh, maybe, you know, it's just like a random murder. It could be like the ex-boyfriend, whatever. But then they started coming. More and more women started being found brutally murdered and taken apart.
Prostitutes.
Specifically prostitutes too, exactly. Then a few letters were received by media outlets in Scotland Yard from individuals claiming to be the murderer. So that's a little brief. We're going to go...
Scotland Yard.
That's a little brief kind of background, so you kind of get the point before we dive into like specific chapters and parts of it. Jack the Ripper wasn't the first serial killer, but Jack the Ripper was kind of the first serial killer that made like worldwide news, went into a media frenzy over what happened because of how gruesome it was and also just like the way the papers were reporting on it. But we'll talk about that again. But you want to listen to this one because, it kind of like started the serial killer
trend.
Media
to
phase.
give some background, Scotland Yard is the British equivalent to the FBI. Also, I think something that was really popular with Jack the Ripper was that it was unsolved, and people like that stuff.
True,
I don't
duh.
know. That's
Thank you
why
for
our
being
whole
here.
Podcast
I didn't even
exists.
say that. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we're still talking about it. Like, if he was caught, we'd be like, oh, no, who cares about 5 prostitutes?
Bye. Oh, no.
But we're here,
I'm all into
and
sex
we're going to
work.
make blind
I'm not into sex work. Like, I don't do it, but I'm for it.
We're going to make
Not into it yet.
120-year-old blind accusations.
You just did not
No,
hear any of it.
You just ruined my joke.
So the victims, as we said, there are believed to be 5 women that were killed by Jack the Ripper. All of them are prostitutes, and they're actually sometimes referred to as the canonical 5.
These 5 are confirmed.
Yes, 5 confirmed. But some people are kind of hesitant about one of them, but we'll get into each of the victims. So Ann Nichols was killed on August 31st. Annie Chapman was killed on September 8th. Elizabeth Stride was killed on September 30th. Catherine Eddowes was killed on September 30th as well. 2 in one night, double whammy. That's a twofer.
Two birds, one knife.
And I don't mean to make fun of this because, like, I feel bad, but, like, it was 1888. I feel like it's fine.
Yeah, you've had your time to cry.
The ghost of Catherine Eddowes is going to be like, how dare you call me a double whammy? And then they're going to give me a double whammy in the face. You know? And then Mary Jane Kelly, the last supposed, was killed on November 9th.
All of 1888. Mm-hmm. So this is actually, pretty quick. Mm-hmm. Jack the Ripper was in and out.
Let's get into the first victim, Mary Ann Nichols, who is also known as Polly Nichols. Like, what is Polly short for? Mary Ann? Like, people could just be like, oh, my name's Polly?
Polly Pocket, baby.
Polly Pocket, Polly want a cracker?
I don't know.
Okay. But anyway, poor Polly struggled with alcoholism and turned to prostitution to make a living. On August 30th, 1888, she was seen drinking at a pub in Whitechapel. Can I say
No,
now?
Just say her lower abdomen, you can infer.
Her hoo-ha.
That's okay.
Her hootie?
No, you should not say her hootie was bludgeoned.
Her cooch had been stabbed twice.
That's even worse.
Let me look at synonyms. Her lady parts had been stabbed twice, and the lower part of her abdomen was partly ripped open by a deep, jagged wound, causing her bowels to protrude. Disgusting. And, let's just keep moving on, because there's 5 of these, and they're just going to get progressively worse, literally. It's 1 week later, the second victim, known as Annie Chapman, or Dark Annie, was killed. And Chapman was a married woman, but separated from her husband, and she turned to prostitution to make money. On September 8th, 1888, Chapman was found dead in a backyard in Whitechapel with a cut to her throat, and her abdomen was opened. This time, her abdomen had been cut entirely open, with a section of the flesh from her stomach being placed upon her left shoulder. Weird. And another section of skin in her small intestines placed above her right shoulder. So specific body parts were placed. I feel like that's like symbolic.
They're trying to send a message.
They're sending a message, but I don't think they've ever found out what that is.
Hey, that's a pretty cryptic message. 200 years and it hasn't been solved.
Yeah. Or maybe the person was just crazy and they were just like, ooh, let me put this here and this here. An autopsy also later revealed that her uterus and sections of her bladder and lady parts were removed. Disgusting. What a freak. An eyewitness claimed they saw Chapman standing outside with a dark-haired man wearing a brown deerstalker hat and dark overcoat. According to this eyewitness, the man had asked Chapman the question, "Will you?" to which Chapman had replied, "Yes." So that was the eyewitness. That's what they heard.
You can't trust a man in a deer stalker hat.
I don't even know what that is. Now we're on to the double event, the double whammy, as we called it earlier, with Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes. Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes were both killed in the early morning hours of September 30th of 1888. Stride's body was discovered in Whitechapel with a single clear-cut incision across her neck. However, there were no other mutilations to Elizabeth's body, which caused uncertainty whether or not Jack the Ripper killed her. So this one was a little bit, weird. Okay, there's 2 that happened in the same night. Did he really go and do 2 when he was spacing them out? And also it was only her neck that was sliced, so I feel like that wasn't similar obviously to Jack the Ripper's mutilations typically. But then Catherine Eddowes was seen by witnesses on September 30th, 1888 with a man in Whitechapel. Her body was discovered shortly after 1 a.m. on October 1st. She had a cut to her throat and her abdomen had been mutilated with her left kidney and part of her uterus removed. Her face had been disfigured, with her nose severed, her cheeks slashed, and cuts measuring 1/4 of an inch and 1/2 an inch respectively, vertically incised through each of her eyelids. Ugh. A triangular incision, the apex of which pointed towards Eddowes' eye, had also been carved upon each of her cheeks, and a section of the auricle and lobe of her right ear was later recovered from her clothing. Just bizarre, placements,
in the
signs,
middle of the night.
shapes,
yeah. Jack the Ripper is an odd fellow.
Her apron was found somewhere else in another location, and above that wall was the words, "The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing," in chalk. Now, the message was believed to mean that a Jew, or Jews in general, were responsible for the series of murders, but it is unclear whether the graffiti was actually written by the murderer or if it was just a coincidence because there was graffiti everywhere, because this was like a district of London that was just obviously, as I said at the beginning, impoverished, bad area kind of thing. So do you think the graffiti was there on purpose? Do you think he left the apron in a specific spot and did graffiti there?
No, I think it was probably there before, and then it was left there on purpose to kind of throw them off their trail.
But why didn't they ask people that lived around the area if they've ever remembered this graffiti being there before that night?
Maybe
you know?
I don't know.
Like, I feel like I would go to the
day.
people that lived like next to the wherever this alley or whatever it was, and I would be like, hey, have you noticed this when you were like walking home getting your eggs in the morning? Have you ever noticed this graffiti about Jews on the wall? Because that's like I feel like that's a sign, not a sign. It's a clue, obviously, but they didn't even figure out if it was related or not, if it was a coincidence or not. But anyway, now we're getting to Mary Jane Kelly, which is definitely the most brutal and disgusting out of all of them. So,
and it was the crescendo.
Now, Mary Jane Kelly is often referred to as Jack the Ripper's last victim, although people do argue that there could have been more after her, and they've theorized about some murders and their possibility of being committed by Jack the Ripper as well. But Mary Jane's body was found extensively mutilated, and she was found on her bed in the room she lived in on November 9th, 1888. Her face had been, quote, hacked beyond all recognition, with her throat severed down to the spine and the abdomen almost emptied of its organs.
Yeah, there are photos of all of these murders. I do not recommend you look them up. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, they are very old, so they're not very detailed. Mm-hmm. But I did not need to see that.
Yeah. And so her uterus, kidneys, and one breast had been placed beneath her head, and other viscera from her body placed beside her foot, about the bed, and sections of her abdomen and thighs upon a bedside table. The heart was missing from the crime scene, so people assume that because this one was just so mutilated and the heart was gone, that perhaps this means that it was crescendo. Is that how you say it?
Crescendo. Like, this is his final...
Arrotenda.
Huzzah.
The murders overall. Each of the canonical 5 murders was perpetrated at nighttime, on or close to a weekend, either at the end of a month or a week or so after. In 1894, the Assistant Chief Constable of the Metropolitan Police Service and head of the Criminal Investigation Department wrote a report that stated, quote, the Whitechapel murderer had 5 victims and 5 victims only. So, there could be theories, there were more after this, and there's like a whole list of them. Metropolitan Police Service head guy basically was like, there was only 5. So that's what we're going to go with for the sake of the video, for the sake of time. Media coverage and its effect on the community. So this is kind of why Jack the Ripper's story is so important and interesting, at least to me. I don't know. But the media coverage of the murders created a ton of fear in the community, as you can imagine. How would you be feeling, if like you heard that there were 5? I mean, I guess you're fine if you're not a prostitute.
Yeah, if I was a lady of the night, I probably would stop looking for Johns. But,
I would probably like travel somewhere.
Yeah, get out of Whitechapel.
I would live, I feel like, what about the other? I mean, I guess they have no money, so it's like, what are they going to do? But like stop working, I guess. Like go on vacation, take some time off, take some sick days, I don't know. So the papers during that time would sensationalize the killings and would publish graphic details of the murders that they might not publish today. Like, do you think they would give all these details to the public, like if this happened today?
I would say they would give details, but they would not
the photos specify. They were showing photos, right?
The photos in the newspaper.
Yeah. Additionally, in 1880, so 8 years before this happened, there was an act to make school attendance required regardless of the social class the students were in. So basically more working class people were literate and could actually read the paper. People were talking about even more, making rumors, theories on it. And a lot of the people in the community were criticizing the police even for not catching the killer. And they were definitely, out of panic and fear. But there were even rumors that the police were involved in the murders and were covering up evidence.
Well, I could see it.
Yeah. You know what? Who knows? Maybe it's let's clear. Maybe they the mayor or whatever. Oh, wait, what's the London? What?
Mayor of London.
London. Maybe he hired the police to get rid of the prostitutes and scare people to stop being prostitutes because they wanted to clean up Whitechapel.
Oh, because it was so crappy after everyone moved in. Well, there's a little reverse psychology. Just murder some prostitutes.
Yeah.
It's interesting. If you look at like serial killers in general, they oftentimes choose prostitutes because they're looked down upon in society.
Yeah. Or like homeless people too. Like a lot of people just kill homeless people.
And get away with it too.
Yeah. Like that Stephen King book or whatever. Okay. In addition,
a girl I knew actually growing up killed a homeless person.
Really?
Yes.
On purpose?
No.
What? How did she kill him?
Drunk driving.
Did she go to jail?
I don't think she's in jail.
What's her name? Air her out. Air her out. In addition to that, false information was regularly printed as fact in the papers. They were just allowed to say kind of whatever they wanted. And several articles would speculate on the nationality of Ripper being Jewish because of that graffiti, which started more xenophobia in the community when there was already a bunch of racism going around and crazy things people were doing. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, they shouldn't publish details about murders. You would freak people out even more. It's going to create a frenzy. People are going to like panic. They're going to freak out, whatever. But then I'm like, but people should know, like the general public should have access to all information. Like,
well,
I would want to know.
But oftentimes, like if we look at the Idaho case, for example, they're holding information back because it's part of their investigation.
Oh, because it's part, okay, yeah.
But nowadays, like the Jack the Ripper murders are impossible. You can't just murder people like this anymore.
That's true.
With DNA and stuff. Look at the Golden State Killer, how he had murdered so many all over California, and they catch him 50 years later. And it's interesting because they solved the first DNA case in 1986, and that's when the Golden State Killer stopped killing people. And it turns out he was actually a police officer. So that's how he was kind of in the know, and he heard, like, oh, shit, they're starting to solve crimes with DNA. I need to stop doing this because I'm leaving DNA.
Damn.
Yeah. Stay woke, bitch.
Despite the fear and anxiety caused by the Jack the Ripper murders, the community in Whitechapel also came together on the bright side. Groups like the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee were formed to patrol the streets at night and to try to catch the killer, while others worked to improve the living and working conditions in the area. It's so interesting, like, those committees. Like, I think of Neighborhood Watch. Is that still a thing? Like, how does that happen?
I see those street signs every once in a while, like a good old Neighborhood Watch street sign. Put a photo up of one. I've seen them around.
But does that just mean like one person, like a neighbor, takes a turn each night to like be on the? They don't like walk around. They're not like
no, but it's like all of the cars on your street. If there's a sketchy car, if there's sketchy people.
So like, is one person in charge each night, or how does that work?
Well, so here, how about this? So say our neighbor goes out of town. He tells us, oh, I'm going out of town. And then all of a sudden we see workers there. We text him and say, are there workers there? Or are
yeah, but that's just what a neighbor does. You don't need a watch for that. You don't need a neighborhood watch.
Well, it's more of like, we're woke. Stay away. We're armed. Stay away.
I thought neighborhood watch was like, I feel like you see in the movies, them like walking down the street with like a bat or whatever. There's like one person.
You're going to stop.
With a bat? Yogi Berra. Or what's his name?
Cocaine Berra?
No, Yogi.
That was a Cocaine Bear joke.
So where did the name Jack the Ripper come from?
Came from him, baby.
Yeah.
He named himself, which is kind of interesting. It goes to show his ego. He I feel like serial killers want to be known. They want the fame, the glory.
They do.
Like BTK.
Some of them. Not all of them, but yeah, a lot of them have this like...
No, that's why they do it. They want to be infamous.
Not all of them. Not like Jeffrey Dahmer. He like didn't want.
Well, I was thinking like BTK.
You mean the serial killers that like write letters and try to like be like a mystery?
Yeah, like BTK.
So the name Jack the Ripper came from a letter that went to the Central News Agency in London in September 1888, and the letter was signed "Yours truly, Jack the Ripper." And we're gonna get into all of the letters soon, but. Talking about the name specifically, in addition to this signature, the letter contained details about the murders that were not yet known to the public. Specifically, the letter included the phrase, "I am down on whores and I shan't quit ripping them till I do get buckled." So the ripping, Jack the Ripper, yeah.
Ay.
But there were other names that were originally used during the like investigation when it was happening in 1888. The name... pre-letter. The name Whitechapel murder because all the known victims either worked or lived in Whitechapel, obviously in London. And another nickname was the, quote, leather apron due to a suspect seen wearing such an item, and the terror of Whitechapel as well. So over the course of the murders, the police department, as well as newspaper agencies, and even just individuals in general, were receiving hundreds of letters regarding the case of Jack the Ripper. Unfortunately, obviously, most of the letters were just hoaxes or useless advice of people being like, this is how you should catch him, like as if they know any better than like the police force. Who would take time to do that? I mean, I guess like you had time because there was nothing to do.
Have you ever seen the RBI thread?
But out of these hundreds of letters, there were just a few that were the most notable and the police actually treated as authentic. These 3 letters were the Dear Boss letter, the Saucy Jack postcard, and the From Hell letter. But let's start with the first one, the Dear Boss letter. It was dated on September 25th, but postmarked September 27th, and it was received the same day by the Central News Agency. It was first just considered a hoax, but when Eddowes, one of the victims, was found 3 days after the letter's postmark, with a section of one ear cut from her body, not the letter, but her body was cut, the promise of the author to clip the lady's ears off gained attention. So in the letter, He referenced
clip her ears.
Clipping ears. 3 days later, her ears
were
clipped. But no, it wasn't actually clipped off. They were kind of like nicked by the killer. So either it was just nicked incidentally during the attack, and the letter writer's threat to send the ears to the police was never carried out because they said that they were going to send them, but they never did.
Well, maybe they got spooked.
Maybe they were like, no, UPS it's too expensive. They're too heavy. The ears are too thicky. But this was the first letter where the name Jack the Ripper was first used. After this first letter, most of the letters that followed did copy the same tone. Tone, not tome. What's tome mean? The authenticity of the letter has been debated, but it is generally believed to be one of the most likely to have been written by the killer himself out of the 3. Dear boss, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. I have laughed when they look so clever and talk about being on the right track. That joke about leather apron gave me real fits. I am down on whores and I shan't quit ripping 'em till I do get buckled. Grand work the last job was. I gave the lady no time to squeal. How can they catch me now? I love my work and want to start again. You will soon hear of me with my funny little games. I keep changing this accent.
Yeah, you gotta, he's British.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, come on.
Oh, maybe. Oh, no, we don't know that.
Or he could have been French. Or Polish. Read it in the Polish accent.
I saved some...
Hello?
What? I saved some of the proper red stuff in a ginger beer bottle over the last job to write with it.
I saved some of the proper red stuff in a ginger beer bottle to write with it.
He's translating in case you guys didn't understand my British accent. If you're Polish. I saved some of the proper red stuff in a ginger beer bottle. Ooh, specific. They should have gone to all the ginger beer bottle manufacturers and seen. I would have been a great detective.
Sign her up,
but
baby.
Here we are with my smoke machine and my peep kebab. Beep, beep, beep. Anyway, moving on. What? Over the last job to write with it, but it went thick like glue and I can't use it.
Yeah, the blood coagulates, actually.
Can't use it for what? Oh, to write. He wanted to write with it.
Yeah, because...
He can use it.
No, the hemoglobin dries up very quickly.
Okay, well then mix it with some water. Hello?
I don't think it works that way.
But maybe he didn't write with it, but he could have just splattered some to be proof that he was the killer. If he wants so much notoriety, if he wants to take notoriety, thank you. If he wants to take, if he wants to take credit for the murder, like you're saying, like, oh yeah, they want it, they want the attention, whatever. Why didn't he pour a little blood on it?
Because he started... just finish the letter.
Okay, fine, sorry. The next job I do, I shall clip the lady's ears off and send to the police officers just for jolly, wouldn't you? Keep this letter back till I do a bit more work, then give it out straight. My knife's so nice and sharp, I want to get to work right away if I get a chance. Good luck. Yours truly, Jack the Ripper. I got way too into that. What? Now I understand the appeal of being a serial killer. Just kidding. I feel like I can't joke about that because it's going to be used in court in like 20 years.
Like 2 years? I'm going to show up dead.
Shut up.
Dead hailing.
Shut up, Jack the Ripper. Now it's time for Saucy Jack. Ooh. Ooh, when he's saucy.
So this is the second letter, and this was sent after which murder?
Ooh, just a few days after the double event. The double whammy. The Saucy Jack letter is a postcard that was received by the Central News Agency on October 1st.
Cue photo. Now, I wonder what was on the other side.
I know. Like, where was he? Like, the London Bridge want to go down
like
London
Bridge is falling down like these hookers.
Oh, no, not the hookers.
The London hookers are falling down, falling down, falling down. The London hookers are falling down. Da-da-doo-da-doo-doo.
Okay. The postcard, which was... The postcard, which was written in handwriting that was different from the Dear Boss letter received earlier, reads, I was not codding, dear old boss, when I gave you the tip. You'll hear about Saucy Jack's work tomorrow. Double event this time. Number 1 squealed a bit, couldn't finish straight off, had not got time to get ears for police. He's like, sorry, I didn't have time to send you the ears. Thanks for keeping last letter back till I got to work again. The postcard was signed Jack the Ripper and contained details about the murder that were not yet known to the public. The reference to the double event and the mention of Saucy Jack's work suggested that the author was responsible for both murders on the same night. Crazy, Saucy.
Yeah, and that also references how he didn't finish. Like, he just slit her throat.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's pretty mild for Jack the Ripper. Yeah, Jack the Ripper is a coward.
Coward.
A lot of these serial killers, honestly, are cowards.
Yeah.
It's like a cat and mouse game.
They have crazy insecurity issues.
Is that daddy issues?
No, don't. Hey, no. Haven't you seen Dahmer with his daddy? His daddy loved him?
No.
Or wait. Oh, yeah, he left him. But his mommy worse. Mommy issues more.
No, but his daddy gave him roadkill.
True, but
his daddy fucked him up.
But mommy left him.
That's true. Mommy issues because his mom was a hooker and he's forever resentful.
Ooh, or maybe his dad left his mom for a hooker. Like the Dear Boss letter, the authenticity of the Saucy Jackie postcard had been debated over the years, with some experts believing it to be a hoax or a copycat letter. The From Hell letter is a letter that was received by George Lusk, who was the chairman of the Whitechapel Vigelance Committee, on October 16th, 1888, along with a small box that contained half of a human kidney preserved in wine. He should have gone to all the wine stores. They should have gone. Never mind. This letter. Get it?
Thank you, detective.
Or
should I say constable? That's what they call them in England. Thank you, constable.
What if one day I actually want to be a detective and they use these YouTube videos against me and they're like, yeah, so you didn't get the job. The handwriting and style is unlike that of the Dear Boss letter and Saucy Jack postcard. Edo's left kidney had been removed by the killer, and the writer claimed that he, quote, fried and ate the missing kidney half. So now he's all of a sudden eating things. This Jack the Ripper. He's Jack the Eater.
And then he's trying to be Jack the Gassy, or I should say Jack the Ass Ripper.
The ass ripper.
Yeah.
Good one. But there is actually disagreement over this kidney. Some contend that it belonged to Edo's, while others argue that it was a practical joke. The kidney was examined by Dr. Thomas Openshaw of the London Hospital, who determined that it was human and from the left side, but contrary to false newspaper reports, he could not determine any other biological characteristics. Also, why didn't they have more than one guy look at the freaking kidney?
Well, things back in the day, I love how they had to bring it to a hospital to determine.
I'm like, did no one think of anything back then?
I'm telling you, things were metal.
They were just smoking pipes like, what are we gonna do about this murder case?
I say.
Oh wait, they're British. I forgot. Oh, what are we gonna do about the murder cases over here? And they're wearing cats. And they're all like
big
men.
bowler hats.
However, it was postmarked more than 24 hours after the killings occurred, long after details of the murders were actually just known and publicized by journalists. So it could have been just a random person pretending that they were Jack the Ripper.
I love that you could pretend to be a serial killer back in the day because there's no way to trace it to. Nowadays, you got your fingerprints, you got your DNA. They got me on 23andMe. I'm done in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Scotland Yard published parts of the Dear Boss letter and the postcard on October 3rd with the ultimate hope that a member of the public would recognize the handwriting and be able to pin it on someone. I know,
Imagine.
Right? Oh, that looks like my dad's handwriting. It's like your dad's Jack the Ripper. I wonder if, Jack the Ripper's son knows. Or maybe he doesn't have a son.
We don't know.
On October 7th, 1888, George R. Sims in the Sunday newspaper Referee implied scathingly that the letter was written by a journalist, quote, to hurl the circulation of a newspaper sky high.
Smoke for the hoax.
Police officials later claimed to have identified a specific journalist as the author of both the Dear Boss letter and the postcard. The journalist was identified as Tom Bullen in a letter from Chief Inspector John Little to George R. Sims dated September 23rd, 1913. A journalist named Fred Best reportedly confessed in 1931 that he and a colleague at the Star had written the letter signed Jack the Ripper to heighten interest in the murders and, quote, keep the business alive.
See, something about the British tabloids, man.
Wait, they confessed in 1931? This happened in 1888. What was he, like, on his deathbed? And he was just like, you know what?
By the way, I punked everybody on Jack the Ripper. Dude, the British tabloids have been slimy for 150 years.
I didn't know that they were like known to be slimy.
What do you mean?
Yeah,
Harry and Meghan. We saw that show.
Justice for Meghan.
Justice for Meghan.
Let's now get into the investigation, even though we kind of were touching on some of it, but whatever. A large team of policemen conducted house-to-house inquiries. Oh, so they did. They just didn't ask about the graffiti.
Very scientific.
Stupid. Throughout Whitechapel, forensic material was collected and examined. Suspects were identified, traced, and either examined more closely or eliminated. Over 2,000 people were interviewed. Okay, so they were working. Upwards of 300 people were investigated, and 80 people were detained. Following the murders of Stride and Eddowes, the commissioner of the city police offered a reward for the arrest of Ripper. The investigation was conducted by the Metropolitan Police Whitechapel Division Criminal Investigation Department, the CID. After the first murder, detectives were sent from the central office at Scotland Yard to assist. Oh, okay. So the FBI. The City of London police were involved as well. Butchers, slaughterers, surgeons, and physicians were suspected because of the manner of the mutilations. A report confirms that 76 butchers and slaughterers were visited and that the inquiry encompassed all their employees for the previous 6 months. So they were going to, like, butchers. And they're like, hey, Bugsy. Arthur Avenue butcher.
I'd be more freaked out by a slaughterer, someone who just murders animals for a living.
But what kind of butcher? They get the thrill of killing animals all day. Who wants to?
Butchers don't. Butchering is like an art.
Yeah, but who wants to work after work? Why would they want to do that to prostitutes? You know what I mean?
Well,
if you're a I don't know.
A construction worker, you don't want to go home and do more construction.
Yes. Queen Victoria actually thought the pattern of the murders indicated that the culprit was a butcher or cattle driver on one of the cattle boats that plied between London and mainland Europe. The cattle boats were then examined, but the dates of the murders did not coincide with the single boat's movement.
I love that
Queen Victoria.
I love that the Queen can just make blind accusations and they have to investigate it.
She's
what a position of power.
They
Smoke for the Queen.
At the end of October, a police surgeon was actually asked to give his thoughts on the extent of the murderer's surgical skill and knowledge. The police surgeon's assessment was based on his own examination of the most extensively mutilated victim and the post-mortem notes from the 4 previous murders. He wrote, all 5 murders no doubt were committed by the same hand. The surgeon was strongly opposed to the idea that the murderer possessed any kind of scientific or anatomical knowledge. Maybe he was the one then.
Throw them off their trail.
Due to the lack of any surviving forensic evidence, they cannot identify the murderer by DNA. The available material has been handled many times and it's too contaminated to provide meaningful results. We actually bought one of the kidney to investigate ourselves. Just kidding. However, there have been mutually incompatible claims that DNA evidence points conclusively to 2 different suspects. So it would be cool if in 5 years, someone is the great whatever grandchild of Jack the Ripper, and he's like, oh, I found this chest, and this is a letter of him
Mm.
admitting. Why wouldn't Jack the Ripper, in the end of his life, write it down for someone to find, the truth?
Maybe he died unexpectedly.
Yeah. Now the suspects. The concentration of the killings around weekends and public holidays, and within a short distance of each other, has indicated to many that the Ripper was in regular employment and lived locally.
There are a lot of theories that he was a nomad from a different country, and he'd come in, murder, and then escape.
The term Ripperology was actually coined to describe the study and analysis of the Ripper case in an effort to determine his identity.
And there are Ripperologists to this day, people who consider themselves experts.
Ooh,
I would consider you a Ripperologist after this podcast.
Me or them?
You.
Thank you. Jeez. Wow, Louise. I can add that to my resume.
You're supposed to say, you are one too.
Oh, you are one too.
Thank you. It's on my resume.
Ripperologist. I'm going to get a t-shirt and Ripperologist.
Yeah, me too. Like, I'm gonna go to Taco Bell and just sit in there like, oh God, clear this guy out of here.
There are many varied theories about the actual identity and profession of Jack the Ripper, but authorities are not agreed upon any of them, and the number of named suspects reaches over 100. Genetic tests published in 2019 point to Aaron Kosminski, a 23-year-old Polish barber and a prime police suspect at the time, but critics say the evidence isn't strong enough to declare this case closed. But there was someone that was found recently because of new DNA evidence. And it wasn't the first time Kosminski had been linked to the crimes, but it is the first time the supporting DNA evidence had been published in a peer-reviewed journal. There's also a very compelling theory that makes the claim that Jack the Ripper was actually an American doctor who goes by the name of Dr. H.H. Holmes. Holmes was America's first serial killer who terrorized Chicago in the late 1880s. He built elaborate death traps in a massive 3-story hotel known as the Murder Castle. Holmes confessed to killing 27 people, but may have killed closer to 200. I don't know why even lie at that point. Like, you're embarrassed? Like, what?
Yeah, no.
According to his great-great-grandson, Jeff Mudgett, Holmes documented the murder and mutilation of several prostitutes in London in his 2 diaries. He traveled to London in 1888, the same year the murders occurred. Handwriting samples between the Ripper and Holmes are very similar. One expert suggested they were written by the same hand. Apparently, Scotland Yard even went to America during the investigation because there were rumors that the Ripper could be an American doctor, but they abandoned the search because of funding. Jeff Mudgett detailed his findings in a book and helped produce a series, but his theory has been met with criticism by many who believe Mudgett is just trying to sell books. But that would explain why they just stopped. Like the murders just were in a certain area and then just stopped. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, obviously give it a like, comment anything because we reply to every single comment, and subscribe for weekly videos on the paranormal and true crime topics that you definitely want to hear. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time on Cauldron Convos.
There once was a man named Jack whose gas could knock you on your back. It was loud and smelly and quite a shock, and it would leave you breathless like a clock. Jack would try to hold it in, but sometimes that was a sin. Gas would build and build until it escaped unfilled. It was the sound that could make you jump and a smell that could make you thump. Jack just laughed and said, "Oh well," and it continued on with his gas spell. Despite his stinky little quirk, Jack was a friendly sort of jerk. He'd make you laugh and make you grin, and you'd forget about his gas within. So if you meet a guy named Jack and you hear about his gas attack, just laugh and enjoy the show and hope that it won't linger too slow. So let's all laugh and have some fun and enjoy the gas that comes from everyone.